Welcome on in. It's our first playoff edition of Over and Back. I'm your host, Dan Alexander, and I'm bringing a familiar face in for the playoffs. Actually, a guy who's going to be sitting shotgun with me on the road trip up to Boston. That's right. I'm going to be out there, and I'm going to be here with my guy, Hutton Jackson, joining the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Hutton Jackson. You can find him on all socials. He's with Action Network, a producer and a contributor there. He's also the host of Pro Lacrosse Talk, and my podcast, Bet on Lacrosse, wouldn't even be a thing if it weren't for my guy Hutton. So Hutton is a long time coming, brother. Happy to see you across the screen, man. How's it going?
Good. I'm doing well. I'm excited to go up to Boston with you. We're going to have set a total for how many beers are going to be deleted this weekend. And then we'll have people vote on if it's going to go over or under, but definitely excited to catch some lacrosse games with you. Going to be fun road tripping up and excited to watch some PLL.
Well, we will, of course, enjoy responsibly. I have a feeling that number will be quite high. It's also over 3 days, folks, so we will set the number. We'll throw it out there on our Twitter. Follow it on at Bet on Lacrosse. I couldn't be more excited, though, man. Like, it's going to be a great trip up there. I haven't been up to Boston ever. I know those games at Gillette are absolutely electric, so I'm pumped for that. We're going to be seeing some former guests. Sarah Griffin, who was on here, she's going to be out there, going to be meeting up with old friends and new. So I'm pumped for that too. So we gotta finish this show up so people can tune in, and maybe on their road trips they can throw it on, listen to it like a podcast. So we're actually going to do things a little bit differently this week since we only have 3 games here for the quarterfinals of the PLL playoffs. Normally we do our quick sticks. We just take 2 games right off the top. We do our total talk about an interesting total for the week, and then we do our angle of the week and talk about maybe the featured game. What we're going to do here is break down the games right here in our quick stick segment, give our thoughts just on the surface, maybe some player props that Hutton's been eyeing. He has been crushing them. You can check those out on his Action Network feed, so he'll let you know how to do that a little bit later in the episode, but nothing to it but to do it, Hutton. So let's get into it, my guy. Start off with our quick sticks here and start off with the game that while I am utterly excited for, I don't know if I'm going to be getting any money out of my pocket on. It's Atlas taking on Waterdogs. Atlas are 1.5-point favorites. The total in this one, depending on where you shop around, it's 25.5. A big number that we're going to be talking about coming up in our Total Talk segment. But if you like the over, there's a 24.5 out there on Barstool Sportsbook. So as far as this game goes, Hutton, I'll just throw out some numbers and get your thoughts on it, because the Atlas, we see them as favorites, but haven't really been good favorites this year. 1-5 against the spread as 1.5-point favorites, and they're playing a team that's pretty damn good as underdogs. 5-2 against the spread are the Waterdogs this season. So, are those just numbers, or is there something to that? Anything on the side for you in this game, or how are you attacking it?
Yeah, I haven't officially bet anything on the side yet. I would definitely lean Waterdogs plus 1.5. I mean, we've talked about not only those numbers, but underdogs against the spread have historically been profitable this year and in past seasons in the PLL. So I think it's ranging around, between 65-70% this season. So pretty good, odds if you're taking a 1.5-point underdog. But I'm just not there yet. Have to lay, I think, minus 120 to do it. And I feel like the Atlas, maybe, they haven't been great. They've kind of been up and down recently, but I feel like this might be a good game for them. Obviously, they lost to the Waterdogs in Denver a few weeks ago by 1. But, if you watch that game, the Atlas actually played really, really well on offense. Jack and Cannon was seeing the ball pretty well. The Waterdogs just capitalized on some of the Atlas's mistakes on defense. And I just feel like, we might see more of a regression from this Waterdogs team. So that's why I'm a little scared. I'm going to rewatch the film again and maybe have a play when we get closer to game time. But as of right now, it's just a lean for me, Waterdogs plus 1.5.
Well, and I think it's a good teaching moment, too, for maybe some new bettors. And it's something that we used to say on Bet on Lacrosse all the time. Sometimes those best plays you're going to make are the plays you don't make at all. So if you don't have a strong vibe coming into this game, sure, maybe as you get more information, maybe as you watch a little bit more film or watch some of the game clips, you're going to have a little bit stronger of a vibe. But I don't think you have to bang your head up against the wall trying to find a play to get out on the game just because a game's on TV doesn't mean that you need to have, no pun intended, action on it. So I think, a good look there. I know you have some player props that maybe we'll get into a little bit later, because I also want to talk this Chrome and Chaos game. And just regarding the side, because I think this one, again, is a bit of a head scratcher. We're seeing Chrome 1.5-point favorites against Chaos. Chaos obviously kind of limped into the playoffs. Wasn't like they made some resounding fanfare, and they're playing hot right now. But there is always that worry when the Chaos find a way to get in, that they can screw up everybody's brackets, that they could screw up our 20-1 future odd tickets that we have on Chrome. So Chrome this season is 1.5-point favorites. It's kind of a new role that they found themselves in since they've kind of drawn into this new guard. 2-3 against the spread. Chaos just 3-5 against the spread as dogs. So neither of these really in a great role for either of them this season. However, like I said, Hutton, this Chaos team, playoffs last year, 3-0 straight up, obviously, 3-0 against the spread as well. So you worry at all about just the difference between playoff experience? It's the first time in the dance for Chrome, or is this team not your father's Chrome, so to speak?
Yeah, well, first off, let's give ourselves a pat on the back for taking that plus 2,000 ticket at the beginning of the season with Chrome, because
I'm the biggest Chrome fan ever right now.
So am I. And not only did we get them at a good price early on, now they're in a playoff path that they don't have to face the 3 teams they lost to this season. So I'm feeling pretty good, knock on wood. Now, I don't want to hype them up and then they lose first round. The last time they were in a playoff environment, this is the first time technically making the playoffs, but last time we were in a playoff environment, they lost to the Chaos when they were supposed to win. And they were also the number 2 seed. So, a little bit of history there. Hopefully that doesn't happen again. But I think you look at this Chaos team, similar cast of characters as last year. Obviously, the offensive pieces are all back. Blaze Reardon is still in net. But I think one of the key pieces that Chaos is missing, and it's kind of plagued them this season, is Johnny Surdick. He was one of their top poles last year. He allowed them to play the one-on-one defense where they push out, they play over aggressive, and then if they get beat, they let Blaze Reardon make some stops. They were able to do that last year. They've tried it again this year and had a little bit less success just because they don't really have that third pole. Johnny Surdick, Jack Rowlett, and Jared Newman could all be, kind of number 1 guys, number 1, number 2 guys on any offense, top cover guys. And that's how they like to play. Without Johnny Surdick, they've had a few guys going in the lineup. They've moved CJ Costabile down a little bit, and he's had experience playing close, but he thrives more as an LSM. And I think that they've really struggled in front of Blaze Reardon, who's done as much as he could, but he hasn't had as big of a season as he did last year. So I really like the Chrome in this matchup, just because of the weaknesses the Chaos have on defense. I think the Chrome defense itself, too, it's a good matchup for them. Although Chaos clearly have some offensive weapons. Yeah. Chrome defense has been second best in the league in efficiency this year, just behind the Whipsnakes, who got that bye. And they've had the best settled defense since 2020 Whipsnakes team, which was playing at an unreal level. So Chrome defense is for real. JT Giles Harris, I think, is going to really cause some trouble for Josh Byrne. He did get scored on twice in the last meeting between these 2 teams, but one of those was when Josh Byrne was able to get a switch onto Mike Messenger, and the other one was just a nice play by Byrne. So I think JT Giles Harris is going to disrupt this offense a little bit more. I'm really liking the Chrome in this. You can get a minus 120 you can get a minus 1.5 at minus 120, I believe, on BetMGM. So I'm looking to play that. I just feel really confident about this Chrome team. I think this offense that's starting to click can really attack this Chaos defense. And as much as I love Blaze Reardon, he actually had his worst performance last week. 6 saves against Atlas. Might be a little banged up there. He went into that game questionable. Don't know if he'll be questionable again going in this one, but also only made 12 saves against the Chrome their last meeting, and he's only gone under 12 or less saves 8 times in his PLL career. That's 4 years. And one of them, 3 of the times that it's happened, it's come against this Chrome team. So obviously a different cast of characters this year, but I think this is a good spot to back the Chrome, laying minus 1.5, despite them not covering last week, which really bothered me. I think they can get it done, get the win, and also get the cover.
Well, and also, how much of that failed cover in the final week of the season was just this team finally exhaling after a year that they knew they were going to be in the playoffs already? So, yes, okay, you maybe got burnt in the final week of the season, but think about when you're betting NFL and how hard it is to bet the last few weeks of the season when some of these teams have already wrapped up playoff seeding. So I think maybe that was the exhale. I would be shocked if you don't see the most motivated Chrome team that we have seen in their entirety. You know what I mean? Because this is finally the spot for them to say, "We told you so." You know what I mean? We maybe we're kind of the butt of everybody's jokes, but I think that 1.5 is a great look. It's not one that I have on my board currently, but as we talk about playoff experience versus just getting hot at the right time, I feel like this is a Chrome team that could probably find what they had bottled up this entire season and really exact it against a team who kind of limped in. And to your point, still kind of nursing some injuries. Does that make any sense? Kind of bolstering that look towards that 1.5, because if Chrome win this game, it's probably going to be a shake up the champagne bottle and explode kind of game where they do have a goal explosion, where they are able to win by margin. I think a game script that sees Chrome winning plays into a Chrome covering, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Farrell's playing well. Max Adler's not an easy matchup by any stretch of the mind, but Adler hasn't played too great since, returning from injury. He was banged up during the NLL season. And then you talk about experience too, that could be one of the knocks on this Chrome team, but they still have some veterans on this team. You look at Colin Heacock, you look at Jordan McIntosh. So there's still some vets on this team. And then you look at the guys that are their rookies. I mean, Logan Wisnauskas just went undefeated for Maryland, won the Tewaaraton, and Brendan Nichtern was a runner-up. So, even though these guys are inexperienced by pro standards, they played at the highest level, and I don't think the inexperience factor is going to play too much into this game.
That's good stuff out of Action Jackson. That's Hutton Jackson. Follow him on Twitter at Hutton Jackson. I want to talk about this Archers Redwoods game, but I'm going to save my thoughts until later, because what we're doing this week when we do Angle of the Week, we're actually going to give out our best bets for this week's PLL action. You can follow us, you can fade us, you can chirp at us. That's what it is all about. So my best bet comes from this Archers Redwoods game. Archers are 1.5 point favorites. Total in this one, 24.5. So again, I'm going to get into this a little bit later in the show during Angle of the Week, during my best bet, but you have anything in this game? I know player props have been your best friend this season before we start getting into a little total talk.
Yeah, I got a nice angle on this game that I'll save for a little bit later, but there are some player props I'm looking. Two guys that I think you can kind of buy low on, and then another guy that you can kind of ride his high streak. Now, I'm hoping there's not some negative regression there, but looking on the Archer side, I really like Schreiber and Will Manny's props. So both their points props are set at 3.5. I like Will Manny's points prop at 3.5. You can get that plus 110, I believe, on DraftKings. And I just feel like, having Grant Ament come back in the lineup, he's been a little bit more quiet. But when they last played this Redwoods team, he scored 3 points. He had 3 points, but it was also on 11 shots. So he probably could have, put some more in the back of the net. I think this Redwoods team, which might be without Eddie Glazner, it's likely that he's not going to play just because he's coming off an Achilles injury. And even if he is playing, I don't know how, effective he's going to be. I think it's a good spot for Manny, to play that off-ball role and find the back of the net, at least, a couple times and maybe get some assists as well. So at 3.5, we've seen his points prop range from around 4.5 earlier in the year. I think you're getting a good number at 3.5 with him right here. And then Schreiber, I actually like his points prop at 3.5 at minus 130, but you can also get a shots on goal prop at 3.5. So I would much actually rather play that. He's shooting shots. His shots are going on goal about 71%. So he's been shooting pretty accurately. And I think this is a good matchup again for him against Redwoods short stick defensive minis that are, probably some of the weaker side of the league. I just think it's a good matchup for him. He's going to be on top of his game in the playoffs. Archers are a team that, although we'll get to the side a little bit later, that are clearly hungry for a playoff victory, having been bounced in the playoffs by the Chaos the past 2 years, lost to the Redwoods in 2019. They're a pretty veteran group. The window's kind of closing on a lot of these guys. So I don't know. I think Schreiber is going to be on the top of his game, but we can discuss the side a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get into that coming up in Angle of the Week. Let's roll on into some of that aforementioned total talk here. And I got to go back to this Atlas Waterdogs game because 25.5, like We saw that number a decent amount last year, but that's a pretty rare total and a high total in this year's PLL. And what we've learned about this league, scoring really being prolific maybe in the first half more than in the second, and games really slowing down. So 25.5, it's the third time this year that we've seen that line in PLL action. The unders with the 25.5 total are 2-0 this season. And as I mentioned, we saw more frequently last year, but we saw the same result. How about going back to last season, Hutton? 25.5 totals. We've seen them 10 times. The under has cashed in 9 of them. The under is 9-1 with a total blindly betting at 25.5. And this matchup has seen some goals, though. 31 in their lone meeting this year. It was a 16-15 win for Waterdogs. So I don't know, 25.5. I almost feel like I categorically have to play that under, though both of these offenses scare me a little bit.
Yeah, I like the under too. Although I do think these offenses can put up a lot of points. You look at the Waterdogs, they take the most amount of shots in the league. So there's definitely some capabilities for these teams to go over this number. But like you said, we don't see too many 25.5s pregame. I think this is a good spot to back the under. Because of that, I think Jack Cannon is going to be at top of his game. Dylan Ward on the other side. So it's not like these, defenses are that bad. And you also see, the Waterdogs defense has kind of been hit or miss, but they have some talent. Atlas have some talent. I don't know. Just looking at this matchup, I don't think it's going to be as high scoring as we last saw. So I like backing the under in this. And I think it also sets yourself up too for maybe a middling opportunity. If you like live betting has been very profitable this year because there's so many swings in a lacrosse game, so many runs. So you could kind of bet the under 25.5, see if it's kind of on track, when this game starts, and then maybe get a good number. If it's like 21.5, 22.5, maybe bet that over. I'm definitely going to watch and see. You definitely don't want to also take away from some of your profit if you do end up hitting that. But I think it's a good opportunity to set yourself up for a middle, and I am definitely going to be playing the under in this game.
Yeah, and just for maybe some of you more novice bettors as well, you hear Hutton throwing out the term there, middle. It's one that we've referenced before as well. But essentially what Hutton's talking about is if you go under this 25.5 and the game starts off lower scoring, you're very likely going to see a live total where you're betting these games in game be, 2, 3, potentially 4 points or more lower than what the closing line was at 25.5. So when Hutton says a middle, he essentially would bet the under 25.5. And then once the line got down to, let's say, 21.5, he would bet that over. And then he has 4 points to potentially middle, where if that game ended with 23 total goals, he would cash his over 21.5 and he would cash his under 25.5. It's a bettor's dream when you can hit one of those middles, and is one that us on Bet on Lacrosse have been hitting quite frequently with how we've been handicapping some of these totals. So that's just, kind of teaching point right there. I'm with you, man. I think pregame, the only way that you can look is under. Yes, these teams could light up and go for 31 goals again, but playoffs just itself, every possession matters a little bit more. Every possession, you're not just going to be chucking them on cage unless you're trailing by crazy double digits or, 5 goals or more. So 25.5, the under would be the look for me on that one. It's one that I have on my betting card already. And like Hutton, if I can get a great line in game, I might go over and try and get a middling opportunity.
Also, if it ends up being really high scoring out of the gate, and then you start seeing, even higher than 25.5, maybe a 29.5, a 30.5, then you could maybe double down on the under there. Woo! And even if your 25.5 under doesn't hit, you're probably getting a good opportunity to get an under, on a higher number too. So that's why I really like the under, because you can kind of even save yourself, even if that bet looks like it's doomed. And we've seen totals as high as 29.5 and 30.5 live, where you're never going to get that, pregame.
Yeah, great point. And that's why we really advocate. Yes, maybe you want to be locked into the game. Maybe you're watching live, so you don't want to be on your app, but there are some advantageous positions and lines that'll make your eyes pop out of your head when you're betting live. The books enjoy it too, because then that drives up their handle as well. But if you stay disciplined, it really can be a profitable endeavor. So let's go from that highest total to the lowest total. 22.5 in Chrome Chaos. 6 times that we've seen that total this season, and opposite of what we saw with the highest total, the lowest total seems like it's always going over. It's 4-2 to the over. I don't know, Hutton, you think this one's low for a reason at 22.5, or is something a little fishy here with this Chrome Chaos total?
As much as I would like to kind of take the almost opposite approach with this game and, bet the over and then see if you can get like a live under as well, this is a tough one for me because you have a Chrome defense who I just talked up. Think, they're one of the teams that have kept a lot of totals low, them and the Whip Snakes. And then you got, Blaze Reardon on the other side, even though I think he might let in some goals. It's just this number I think is low for a reason. So it's tough for me to really tell people to bet this over. It's juiced towards the over as well, being so low. So yeah, it's probably a lean over for me, but it's not one that I would, really go out and bring the welcome wagon out in terms of, really betting heavily on this over. I think it's low for a reason. And I think it's kind of a trap line that they want you to bet that over. But we've seen the Chrome hold teams to under 10 multiple times, most of the time this season. And we've also seen Blaze Reardon put up 19 save games. So, I think it's low for a reason. And I'd be very hesitant to back this over or under strongly.
Yeah, and if you do like the under, shop around, because if you head on over to Barstool Sportsbook, you can get 23.5. Does that extra point really matter? It does in the long term. So if you like the under, bet 23.5. If you like the over, find that 22.5. That's a little bit more readily available than the off market 23.5. So last total I want to get into here with you, this Redwoods and Archers game. I mean, right away, historically, you would think Redwoods, oh my goodness, it's the defense, it's the slow pace of play. We have a 24.5 point total, but regardless of any total that's been posted up, the Redwoods have just cashed like crazy to the over. Very atypical from what we've seen from them heading into this season. They're 7-3 to the over. However, 24.5 sounds about right. Like, that's a sheer pass. That's one of those numbers that you just say, all right, odds makers, you made the number the exact one that I would make it. 24.5. It's a stay away from me. Maybe I would look to go live, but I think I have something I like a little bit more than trying to force a total play in this game. What about you?
Yeah, it's tough with the Archers because you have the most efficient offense in the league in the Archers, but they're also possession advantage is so low, and they, you kind of don't know what you're going to get from them. Like, they may be scoring at a high efficiency, but then they don't have the ball that much. And I feel like this is a game that they might not have the ball a lot. I think TD Erlin might be pretty dominant at the stripe. So I wouldn't play the 24.5. I think it's a pretty rock solid line. Now, if you are looking to maybe bet a total, we also have first half lines. And right now it's 12.5. So even though, times 12.5 times 2, essentially 25 total right there, I do like maybe going over the 12.5 first half line, because you see a lot of these games, they start out hot, they start out fast scoring, there's a lot of scoring to start, and then they slow down. That's kind of been the MO for the PLL. That's why you're able to get, bring home a lot of money on the live lines, because they kind of overreact to the first half. This is one where I think, 24.5, I wouldn't play it over or under either way. It's just too tight for me, but I do expect more goals in the first half. So I would lean over in this game, just because I think if we're going to get a lot of goals in this game, it's going to come in the first half. And, even if it ends up going under that number, you can maybe save yourself a little bit live betting in the second half. So I like going over 12.5, just because I do think the Archers do a really good job of beating teams in transition in the substitution game. Redwoods are not good at defending transition. And, the Redwoods, if they do have a possession advantage, they might be able to put some balls in the back of the net, and I think that might be why I would play the over in the first half. I wouldn't touch it on the full game. So that's kind of my lean here. But again, it's really rock solid line, I think, with this total.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, Hutton's talking about this first half total. That's really the first time that we've been able to bet some of these more micro markets these first half. If you think that the Redwoods are going to jump out to a lead, you can bet them for the first half the first time this season. For the first time ever in betting these PLL games, we have half lines. Now, we don't have anything in the second half, but that's what live betting's for. But there are first half totals and spreads. You can find that on DraftKings. They're rolling in on BetMGM as well. So you have multiple outs. You're going to have an opportunity to be able to attack these markets in different ways. And just as a lacrosse fan and a lacrosse bettor, I love having more of these opportunities. They have game long props too. Like which team will have more ground balls, which team is going to have the face-off advantage. And those I think are pretty easy to handicap. But you're going to be paying a premium. You know, you want to back Trevor Baptiste, you're going to have to lay some juice to do it. But before we get into our angle of the week, give some folks some best bets. I mean, you like me have been to not be as graphic, a pig in slop with the increased options that we've had to be betting on these lacrosse games, because it's only going to help more people get their eyes on the sport. But, you know, for us who are bettors who have been handicapping it for the better part of 3 years, more opportunities early on is always going to be advantageous for bettors, but it's advantageous for the sport too.
No, absolutely. The more options we have to bet, the more you can kind of get people involved and the more angles you can play. I mean, you know, maybe somebody's not really savvy in terms of like playing a spread or a total, but then they see like, you know, do I think the Waterdogs are going to have more face-off wins or the Atlas are going to have more face-off wins? And that's maybe an entryway for them to get into betting. So yeah, I love the different options that we've had. You know, we've had save props before, haven't had them the past couple weeks. Hopefully we get them back coming up leading the game time. But yeah, there's just a lot of different angles you can play. I mentioned the shots on goal earlier too. So I think it's great for the sport that we're getting more different props that people can kind of get in on.
Yeah, ever since we won Scanoni by the hook, there have been no save props to be had.
And the Reardon 11
oh, yeah.
and a half.
yeah.
I mean,
The hook giveth and the hook taketh away, but when the hook giveth too much, no more options to bet it, which I understand. What are you going to do? But Hutton, let's get into angle of the week. And we're doing it a little bit different this week. You're going to get our best bets for this week right this moment here on Over and Back. So if you've enjoyed the show, if you've enjoyed it all year long, we just ask you to tell people about it. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hop in the comments, and share the stuff you see on social. That's the biggest way that you can thank me for the work I put in and the great guests like Hutton I've been bringing on all year long. So Hutton, angle of the week. I'm going to throw it your way because I think we might be giving the folks a double best bet for angle of the week, which previously hasn't been great. This season, we've been doing pretty good when we've been aligned. So Hutton, what are you eyeing? Because I know player props have been your bread and butter too. So what do you got best bet wise for the folks?
Yeah, I have a couple props, and then I really like the side in this Redwoods Archers game. Now, I talked up the Archers offense a little bit earlier, but they have been hit or miss. Playoffs, haven't been as productive. I do think, this could be a game that they could easily win against the Redwoods, but I think the play here is, looking at the numbers, is Redwoods plus 1.5. I just like this Redwoods team, how they've been playing recently. I am a little worried with Glazner being out, but they looked okay against the Chrome last week. And I think TD Erlin is going to be the X factor. I think if he is able to go 65% at the stripe, which the Archers have, the Archers and Waterdogs have been the worst, face-off teams. Archers ended up winning last week because they played one of the worst face-off teams against the Waterdogs, and still it wasn't an easy win for them. I think playing Redwoods plus 1.5, and you're only having to lay minus 105 to do it, is the play here. Also, Redwoods, I don't like looking at historical data, but if you look at the Redwoods in the playoffs, they have either won outright or only lost by one in all 6 of their playoff games. So they're either winning or they're only losing by 1 goal, which means they've been covering that 1.5. So again, don't necessarily take historical data into effect, but I do like how this Redwoods team has been playing. I do like the matchup at the stripe. And I think this is probably the best spot to back a team upsetting. I know we've talked Waterdogs liking them against the spread against the Atlas, but I think the Redwoods have the most capabilities of a big upset in this one.
And Hutton, I'm coming right back to the well with you, because my best bet this week, and this was, Hutton and I came up with these independently, and then when we recorded today, we realized, oh shit, we're on the same side for best bet time. Give me that Redwoods plus 1.5. Yes, the Archers, you look at the record, and they're the better team, right? They're the higher seed. However, 4 of their 6 wins came against the 2 worst teams in the league. So you look at Cannons and you look at Chaos. Outside of that, they have an impressive, final week game against the Waterdogs, which again, how much were either of those teams really playing for? And they have that 1-goal win against this team, the Redwoods, back in July. But what's happened since that 1-goal win? For the Redwoods, they've scored 12 or more goals in 5 straight games since losing that game to Archers. They covered all but 1 of those games, and they've also, for the season, covered 70% of their games. They're also, going back to last year, one of the best against the spread dogs you can bet on in the PLL. They're 7-1 against the spread as underdogs going back to last year. You add in the fact of what Hutton said there earlier as well. They have never lost a playoff game by more than a goal. All they do is scrap. All they do is fight. I think they're live to win the game, so give me that goal and a half at only minus 105. That's a play that I absolutely love. Co-stamp it with Hutton. Best bet, a double one. You have any player props to give the folks on the way out, Hutton?
Yeah, so I have one from Waterdogs Atlas, which I'll talk about, but I do want to touch on a one in this game as well, and it's Rob Pennell. He's a guy that we talked about earlier this week, or earlier in this podcast. We talked about earlier in this episode 2 Archers props that I liked. I like Rob Pennell's props. 2.5 assists is one that has been cashing the past couple weeks. I played it a few times. Other times I've stayed off of it. This is one where I like because he's got a matchup against Graham Hossack, which is going to be a tough matchup. But the offense has been running through Pennell the past, 5 or 6 games. He has essentially been their second half MVP this season. And I like playing either his over 2.5 assists or over 3.5 points in this game. Now, the over 3.5 is a little bit safer because he has been kind of like Brendan Nickturn, where he's sometimes has big assist games, sometimes he has big goal games. And, if you're betting goals or assists, sometimes you get burned because he maybe only has 1 or 2 of those. And it's obviously the one that you bet, of course. That's how it works out. So maybe the safer is to lay the minus 130 and bet over 3.5 points. I think it's going to be, he's got a tough matchup against Graham Hossack, but I think it's going to be tough for them to keep him off the score sheet. But also, he has been feeding a lot more, at least at this rate in his career. So betting, over 2.5 assists at plus 150 is another one that I'd love to sprinkle on. So in terms of this game, that's a prop I like. I know Rob Pennell's been playing really well, so you're kind of at a buy high spot with him, but I think he continues it in the playoffs.
And at plus 150 to go over the 2.5, I love my plus money, Hutton, so you don't have to pull my leg too bad to ride on that one. So I know your favorite prop of the week is coming from that Waterdogs, and this is one that the second props came out, you were rushing to bet with 2 fists. So what's the last favorite bet that you have for the folks before we get them out of here on the quarterfinals edition of Over and Back?
Yeah, so Atlas Waterdogs game. I have quite a bit of props that you can all see on my articles on Action Network. But the one I love the most is Jack Hanna over 1.5 points. He is just electric on the field, and he's taking he's got the largest shot volume in the league. He's high up there. I don't know what exactly he's ranked, but it's almost 6.5 point, or he's almost taking 6.5 shots per game. Now, accuracy has been hit or miss, and going over this number has been a little bit hit or miss, but he did score 2 points in their last meeting. One of them was the game winner. They've been using him a lot more. He's going up against an Atlas team that does have strong short stick defensive middies, but has been a little bit weaker in recent weeks on the defensive side. And I just think this is a good spot for him. Plus to go over 1.5 points, it's just a low number. 1.5 point props have been really money this year. I mean, I've hit some with Ryan Ambler, with Jordan McIntosh. You just got to look at guys that have the ability to maybe have 2 or 3 points in a game and then find that, where it's not that much juice. And Jack Hanna fits the bill this week at over 1.5 points. So I really like him. I feel like he's going to step up in this playoff matchup. He's not afraid to shoot the ball. And I think, he's starting to find the back of the net a little bit more than he did earlier in the season. So I like going over 1.5 points. It's a 2-unit play for me. So definitely my favorite prop of the week.
The volume is there. All he's got to do is just put them on cage or drop some apples. That's all we're asking from Jack Hanna. I'm riding with Hutton. So we got 2 double best bet. Redwoods plus 1.5. Jack Hanna over the 1.5 points. Hutton, huge thanks for coming on, brother. Let people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and where they can find your full slate where you're up like 1 billion trillion gajillion units this year in betting lacrosse. Where can they find all that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Hutton Jackson. I'm also Hutton Jackson on the Action app. So for people not familiar with the Action Network, we have an app. And luckily we have this feature called BetSync. So if you're placing bets on BetMGM, DraftKings, a lot of different sports books, you can actually bet them on the app. You can actually bet them on those sports books, and then it syncs onto your profile. So that way you can track all your bets. So whatever sports book I'm betting on that has BetSync, they're all automatically tracked in the Action app. So you can follow me at Hutton Jackson on the Action app. Also have some articles that are going to appear on there, as well as some videos on there. We have a new media center on the app. So whether you're betting on lacrosse or other sports like the NFL, plenty of content on that app. doing a lot of behind the scenes with the video content on there. So definitely download the app. You can find me there. You can also go on actionnetwork.com and also find my articles there if you prefer to do that. But recommend everyone download the app, make it easier on yourself. If you're placing a lot of bets on different sports books, easiest way to track is the Action Network app.
He's Hutton Jackson. I'm Dan Alexander, and we want you to come by and say hello if you see us in Boston. We're going to be walking around. We couldn't be more excited to be at Gillette. So if you see us out there, definitely stop by. You can also hear us every week on the Bet on Lacrosse podcast. We do live Twitter spaces, so you can follow us there at Bet on Lacrosse. You can follow me on Twitter at Newbie Talks and see not only the bets I drop, but the delicious food that I throw down. So if you enjoy the show, make sure you hop below in those comments. Make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, and we'll talk to you during the semifinals in DC here on Over and Back.